Well, good morning, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing a friend today. We met about, let's say, a year ago in LA at a workshop, and just were able to explore topics like mental health and depression and anxiety and self-injury and even thoughts of suicide. And it's so cool that he's here today. He's the founder of an organization called To Write Love on Her Arms, if you've heard of it. And then he's also the author of the book, If You Feel Too Much. It's just such a privilege to have him here today, and just so excited for him to kick off Mental Health Awareness Week. And we're going to show a quick video. He's also going to be here at 6 in the Arc, and we're going to do another session there, another workshop. We'll sell merch today outside, but then we'll also have it tonight. And so we're so excited to have Jamie Tworkowski here with us. And again, we'll do a video before he comes up. So thank you so much for being here.
People always ask me how this happened. What made it spread? What made it grow? People ask, how do I start something big? I usually smile and tell them I don't know. Because To Write Love on Her Arms started about as small as something could. It was a story and an attempt to help one person. It was a MySpace page. It was a box of t-shirts, and one of those shirts ended up on stage at a Switchfoot show in South Florida on March 30th, 2006. We never could have guessed what it all would lead to.
Now, our Friday Making a Difference report. Growing up can be tough, and too many young people are struggling with depression, addiction, even thoughts of suicide. And perhaps the biggest obstacle, the feeling of being in it all alone.
Tworkowski started an organization, To Write Love on Her Arms. Funded mainly through the sale of t-shirts, the group's MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter responses number in the hundreds of thousands.
Somewhere in the equation of helping young people in despair is not just getting them the information, but telling them in some way, I hear you, I see you, I'm with you.
I think hopefully there's an element of caring for this person, that they feel heard. I think we never know what can save a life, but I think it's important that we go there and that we try.
Renee's story was told in a way that was honest, and I suppose it gave people permission to be honest about their story, about their struggles, their questions, and their pain. A common thread began to emerge. It was people saying, this is something no one knows. This is something I've never said out loud. And so there was this feeling that people were taking a step forward. And for a lot of people, it was the very first step. Folks began to realize that they were not alone. Other people were dealing with the same things they were. Someone else had been where they were. Someone else was there right now. To Write Love on Her Arms became something like a bridge. The goal was to move people from a place of shame and isolation to community, and from hopelessness to hope. More than anything, the goal was for people to get the help they needed and deserved. And so ever since then, we've been pointing to professional help. We've given $1.6 million to it. We point to counseling, treatment centers, crisis hotlines, and support groups. We've learned that 2 out of 3 people who struggle with depression, they never get help for it. It's because of stigma. People feel like they can't talk about this stuff. We feel ashamed and feel alone. We're afraid of being misunderstood. We're afraid of being labeled and judged. But over the last 10 years, we've seen thousands of lives begin to change. We hear from folks who are sitting across from a counselor for the first time, and people stepping into treatment, or someone who, in a desperate moment, they sent a text to crisis text line or called 1-800-273-TALK. These are people literally choosing to stay alive. We've seen some incredible doors open, things we could not have even imagined.
The recipient of the $1 million grant is to write love on our arms.
And it's our belief that your story is sacred and it's priceless and it's entirely unique and no one else can play your part. It's our hope that you will never, ever give up.
Hi. So, To Write Love on Arms just turned 13. That video represents 10 years of haircuts that I had, and I'm the same person, that person. So that explains, just to, yes, 13 years of hair, which is not what this morning is about, or the week, or tonight. But I am super honored to get to be here with you all. I get to spend a lot of time traveling around and get to do a lot of events on college campuses. And for years and years, I've heard of this mythical, beautiful place near the ocean, very near the ocean, in the southwest corner of America, and always hoped I might get to visit. And so I'm super pumped. Dusty is a good friend, and so I'm super thankful that I get to hang with him and that he got to introduce me. And I feel like every time I get to show up and tell our story and talk about mental health, it's always really special for me because I'm aware that these are topics that so many people live with and relate to and have been affected by, and yet so often, maybe especially in the context of the church, these are things that remain silent. These are things that we're not really sure we can be honest about. And yet it's sort of this strange thing when millions and millions, even in America, 20 million people struggle with depression, and yet somehow we believe this lie that if that applies to me, I need to keep it hidden. There's a lot of shame. I'm not sure what response I might be met with if I was honest about that. And so just by being up here and being given a microphone in a few minutes, it's an honor to get to break the silence. And the hope is to start a conversation that continues beyond this morning, beyond this week, that maybe by even me being honest this morning, I'm standing up here as someone who struggles with depression, that it just somehow gives people, you, permission to be honest about the hard things in your life. Maybe specifically mental health, but even beyond mental health. I think I grew up a Christian, I grew up in church, and it wasn't until my 20s, it wasn't until probably my early 20s that I even had language or began to understand what is mental health, what is this word depression, what is self-injury. If you would have asked me when I was 18 or 19, I don't think I could have told you anything intelligent about these issues or these struggles. And I think in a lot of ways, I actually ended up doing more harm than good. I remember being 22 and having my first serious adult girlfriend, and she really struggled with depression. And looking back, I had no tools to help her. I thought that if we just talked about it and we just prayed about it, that was what she deserved. That was the best that I could offer. And it's nothing against talking about it, and it's certainly nothing against praying for someone who's struggling. But looking back, I wish I would have had the wisdom and the understanding to know about the mental illness that she was dealing with, because I maybe could have actually helped her in a real way. There's some really simple examples that I like to share. If you broke your arm, the people around you might offer to pray, and that might be acceptable, but you would probably hope they would pray on the way to the hospital where they fixed bones, right? Does that make sense? If your car is giving you trouble, people could pray for your car. If you're broke, you might have to pray for your car. But what you would prefer is to go to maybe a mechanic who knows how to fix cars, right? And so the world we're dreaming about as an organization, and even me as an individual, is one where it's just normal and acceptable and reasonable for people to be able to put a hand up and ask for whatever help they need. And the good news that we've come to learn is that we live in a world where so many men and women have devoted their careers to meeting these needs, to helping people through the darkest and hardest parts of their story. And I think one of the lies that comes with depression or with mental illness is the lie that I'm alone here. I'm alone and I should be ashamed and this should be a secret. And we tend to isolate, we tend to hide out, we tend to maybe get really quiet. Maybe we feel like we're supposed to smile and just kind of put on a happy face. I grew up around these words words like joy and blessings, and I thought if I'm a Christian and if I'm a good Christian, I'm supposed to have joy and I'm supposed to have these blessings. And I guess maybe subconsciously what I began to ask is there room for my pain? Is there room for me to be honest about this experience of being human? And I think I've come to believe, yes, I've come to believe that I am and we are loved by a God who can handle our honesty and desires our honesty. And what a cool thing that we don't have to navigate this life alone, right? That you are here sitting among other people who can relate to this experience, not only of being a student, but of just being a person on this planet and all the mystery and all the hard stuff and all the beautiful parts that come with being a person on this planet. And so I want to kind of start there. It's also special to be in San Diego because I am more than just a Switchfoot fan. I'm like a Switchfoot super fan who snuck past the rope and gets to sleep at John Foreman's house. So as you may have seen in the video, John was the first human being. I've now said human being too many times and I won't say it again. John was the first human being to wear a To Write Love on Our Arms t-shirt way back in 2006. And I had just written this story and I wondered if over the course of a few weeks or months I could sell 100 of these t-shirts to help pay for my friend's treatment. And I had shared this story with John and Switchfoot was in South Florida. They were about to play to 3,000 people at a college there. And John was really gracious. He was really generous. He just said, man, I'd love to support what you're doing. Would it be okay if I wore this shirt on stage tonight? And I just played it really cool. I'm not like a marketing guru, but I thought, this is potentially really good. And so John puts on this black To Write Love on Our Arms t-shirt, and Switchfoot takes the stage, and just in between songs, he just mentions it. And he doesn't have a lot to say about it. At the time, there's not a lot to say, but he says, hey, my buddy Jamie is doing something cool. He has a project called To Write Love on Our Arms. You can find more about it on the internet. This morning, we have a table set up in the back. We have merch. We have information. We have a website. We didn't have any of those elements the first night. You're allowed to judge me, but in 2006, we had something called a MySpace page. And the giggles are actually welcome because the day I'm afraid of is when I say MySpace and no one says anything because they don't know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I speak at high schools and junior highs, and it's getting close to that, and it makes me feel insecure. But you guys are with me. You've heard of the MySpace, okay? Justin Timberlake tried to bring it back. It's the only thing he couldn't bring back, okay? That's a whole, there's layers, it's a thing. But people at this Switchfoot concert found their way to this MySpace page, and they read this story that I had just written. It was 2.5 pages long, and so many people seemed to relate to the story that I had written about my new friend, Renee. And people said, hey, that sounds a lot like my story. That reminds me of my dad. That sounds like someone I loved and lost. That sounds like my roommate or a neighbor. That sounds like someone I'm concerned about right now. My friend Chad plays the drums in Switchfoot, and he wore the shirt the next night at another show in North Florida, and more messages came in. And people wrote in on behalf of loved ones, and they said, hey, there's somebody I'm trying to help, but I don't know how. Do you have any advice? People began to share things they'd never shared before. People began to ask questions, maybe for the first time or the first time in a long time. People began to share really painful parts of their story. And as you can imagine, I part of it was exciting, it was certainly surprising, but part of it was really overwhelming. I had dropped out of college. Don't do that. Colleges never bring in speakers with that message, you know. But I had dropped out of school to work a job in the surf industry. I grew up a surfer and just fell in love with the surf industry, and I was actually the sales rep for the clothing brand Hurley for the state of Florida at the time, and I thought I would do that job for 20 or 25 years. And I ended up leaving that job to pursue this thing that would eventually become a nonprofit organization. And I was so overwhelmed, but I began to do the homework to learn about the resources and solutions that might exist for people that are walking these roads, for people who are struggling, for people who are in pain. And I started to learn about so many people and places who existed to help, who wanted to help, and who were and are meeting these needs. I started to learn about treatment centers, counseling offices, crisis hotlines, people who work, in the realm of suicide prevention. And over the years, we've just began to add to this list, this find help section of our website that we just continue to build out. And we continue to be able to serve as a bridge and refer people to professional help. And I think one of my dreams, especially for the church, is just that we could assist in that we could learn what it really means to love people well, people who are struggling with mental illness, people who are living with depression, addiction, anxiety, eating disorders, people with thoughts of suicide, that we would really learn to show up. And I think not just as Christians, but as people, we hear this word love 100 times a day, right? And it just gets thrown around, and certainly it shows up a whole bunch in the Bible, and Jesus seemed to prioritize love. And yet, what does it mean to love someone who lives in a place that you can't entirely relate to? What does it mean to love someone who's struggling with something that maybe you've never walked through? Or maybe you have, but just what does it mean to figure out boundaries and to figure out how to care for this person and how to give advice? Or maybe it's not that other person, but for you, what does it mean to be honest about how you're really doing, about how much life or this season of life hurts, about how dark it is, or about how alone you feel, or about something that happened maybe in your family or in your past, and you're just not sure you can show it to people. You're not sure it's a place that you're willing to be vulnerable and allow people to meet you in that place. But I think through the work that I get to do and through my own journey as a person who struggles with depression, I've seen so much good that comes from being open, being honest, getting to a place of learning that it's okay to ask for help. I'm someone who now goes to counseling once a week. I take an antidepressant every night before I go to sleep. And these are tools that I'm so thankful for. These are tools that have added stability to my life. And certainly you can add to the list, and I'm able to add to the list. Somebody said the words, or the word, when there's a hyphen, it's confusing, self-care. Somebody said self-care a few minutes ago on this stage. And I've come to believe that God gives us all these tools. God has orchestrated this life in a way where we get to draw from all of these things that we love, all of these things that are inside of us, hobbies and books and films and songs, and then maybe more than anything, other people. God gives us other people to take this journey with. And I don't pretend that it's easy to be real with a few people, but I've come to believe that it's worth it. And so we talk a lot about this word community. We talk about just my need as a person, that I'm actually made to be known and loved by other people. And for you guys this morning, I'm guessing that's not like a rocket science idea. But I get to go to a lot of places where that's sort of this undercover language to present this idea that you're actually here, and the whole point of it is to be known and loved. and certainly by God, but what a cool thing that we get to be known and loved by each other. And I don't think it'll be indicated by Facebook friends. I think you guys hate Facebook, right? You don't care. Do you guys like Facebook? Okay. Instagram? Do you guys like anything? I did ask Dusty a second ago. I was like, hey, when's spring break? And he was a little off, but he said this week. And I was like, this is an amazing turnout for chapel during spring break. And he's like, okay, last week, like ending now. But I was like, these guys they show up on spring break. Where I was going with that is I don't think it'll be indicated by the number of likes or followers. I think even me, older than you guys, we all get to kind of hold up these trophies maybe a few times a day or a few times a week. We get to pick a filter and pick a caption, and we get to kind of curate our lives. And we get to show off the parts that we're proud of, right? We get to show off, and we all show off different things: meals, vacations, good news, relationships. Some people post too many meals, right? That's annoying. But we all get to kind of pick and choose what we show people. And so I've come to believe that being known won't be indicated by 1,000 people following you or 1,000 people liking that post. But I wonder, do I have a few people who meet you in your questions, who meet you in your pain, who meet you in the places that you wish your life was different, that maybe you wish the story of your family was different? And I don't think we need 1,000 people to know us in that way. I don't even think we need 100. But I wonder, do you have a few? Do you have a few people that you can totally be yourself with, that you can totally be honest with, that you can laugh and cry with? And I've come to believe that we deserve that we're actually designed for that. And again, going back to this God that desires our honesty. We hear so much about freedom, right? The freedom that is found in Christ, the freedom that is found in being a Christian. And so I wonder, shouldn't that mean, or shouldn't that include the freedom to be honest, the freedom to be sincere? I noticed the word joy in the song, and I couldn't help but imagine there's probably some people in the room this morning where joy feels far away, where joy maybe even feels unattainable, or it's been a while since you felt like you were in the room with joy. And my hope is that you feel like there's a place for you here, that it's okay to be honest about that, and that when you can't feel it, when you can't see it, that other people will show up, that other people will offer their joy, their love, their support, their presence, maybe their presence more than anything else. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And I'm not a Bible scholar. I don't spend a lot of time speaking at churches. It's a privilege to get to be here in chapel with you. But that seems to indicate that we're loved by a God who understands pain, who understands the pain of his children, and who cares about it, and who wants to meet us, who wants to save us, who wants to know us in these places. And so my hope, kind of coming toward the end, is just that you feel like you can be honest, and that if you get to a place where you need to put a hand up and you need more help than your friends can provide, your roommates can provide, that it's totally okay. That if you need professional help, it's totally okay. And I hope that broken arm, silly example, the picture of your friends laying hands on your car example, that would stay with you, and you would just realize, hey, if things are off, if there's a sadness that you can't shake, that it's okay to put a hand up and say, hey, I need some help. I need to talk to someone. I need more help than my friends can provide. I need more help than my pastor can provide. And what good news that God gives us some tools here. That God gives us people with unique degrees of wisdom and experience and perspective. People who not only can help, but compassionate people who want to help. So much of the work that we do as an organization is almost being something like a broken record that just encourages people to go to counseling, encourages people to know that whatever help they need, that they deserve it. And I've come to believe that, maybe to use a metaphor, we talk a lot about stories. And I've been up here for a few minutes this morning telling you a story. And you know, that's a word, that's an idea that is used a lot in a lot of different circles. But I wonder if you're comfortable with it. I wonder if it's true that everyone in this room is living a story. And a case can be made, room full of college students, that you guys are early in your story, that there are a lot of pages and a lot of future up ahead. And my guess is that we all have parts of our story that we don't like. You might have parts of your story that you hate. Parts of our story that we wish we could tear out, delete, forget. If you think of it as a book, maybe there's a paragraph or a page or a chapter that you wish you could just get rid of and not think about again. My guess is that somehow in the same story of your life, there are parts that you really love. People and places, the best vacation you've ever gotten to take. Things as simple as your favorite film, your favorite book, your favorite song, the way these things speak to you, the way these things remind you that you're still alive, the best conversation that you've had, the first time you fell in love, that feeling of when we have a crush on someone, and all of the things in between, right? Somehow we show up living these stories that are complex, and we live at both ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between, with incredibly painful pages and incredibly beautiful, miraculous things as well, and all of the stuff in between, all of the stuff in the middle. And my hope is that as you kind of step back and think about this story, or you sit with your story, that you would believe that it matters. That when you add it all up, the story of your life, this story that's still going, that it truly is priceless, that it truly is a miracle, that it truly is sacred. And my hope is that you wouldn't take the word of some guest speaker, right? So, yeah, this guy showed up and he told me my story mattered. But my hope is that as you leave here this morning, that there would be people in your life whose presence, whose friendship, whose words and presence would just remind you how much your story matters. And that through honest relationships and honest conversations, that we truly could be known and loved as we take these journeys. And my hunch is over time, those names and faces may change. Some of them will stay with us our whole lives. Some people will come and go. But I hope that you believe that that's the way this life is intended to be. It's not that we would just have this relationship with God, but that we would take advantage of the fact that we're not here alone, that we get to be in relationship with one another. And certainly in the context of mental health, that we would believe that it's so much of the hope that is found, that it's so much of stepping toward the solution. It's so much of what our recovery will look like. The word I've thought so much about over the last year is just this word connection. I've sat at a couple different meals with people I'm really close to and just ended up crying thinking and talking about my life, and just kind of came away with the realization that like I'm desperate for connection. I'm desperate to connect, to be actually known by a few friends, to get to do life consistently with some other people. And I've just come to remember, like, I am designed for this. I'm not designed to just check my email and check off this to-do list, but like I am made for connection. And again, not only this connection with God, but to get to live out a picture of that where I get to be connected to some other people. And it's going to take me being intentional. It's going to take me being vulnerable. It's going to take me being open and honest. And a lot of times when I go to counseling, it feels like I get to practice. I get to practice being honest. I get to practice talking about hard things. And it's almost like working a muscle where that 1 hour a week, it makes it easier for me to step out of that office and do those things in my other relationships and to do those things in my life. And so that's my hope for you, is that you could take a deep breath and just remember, wow, I'm a person. I don't have to fake it. I don't have to always smile. I don't have to always pretend that I feel happy or that I feel this joy. I'm allowed to be honest about all the parts of being a person. I'm allowed to be honest when I'm sad, when I'm grieving, when I'm mourning, when I lose a relationship, when I lose a person, when I feel haunted by my past or my present. It's okay to say that out loud, because if we're honest, we're in a room full of people that can relate, because you're in a room full of other people. And I think another dream of mine is that if the church could be known not only for our answers, right? I think over the course of my life, the church is mostly known for being really excited about its answers, telling people how to live and how to vote. And we're not really known for being great at meeting people in their questions. And so many people live with enormous questions. So many people live with questions that won't even be resolved this side of heaven. But what does it look like to be people that can step into that mystery, can step into that uncertainty, and just show up in people's pain, in people's longing, in people's suffering? And I get excited about that thought. I want to leave you with something that I wrote. I have a book. It's called If You Feel Too Much. You know that because the words are big on the cover. But I love to close with this piece. And to give you a little bit of context, I wrote this piece the night, it may be a night that you remember, but it was the night that we found out about the death of Robin Williams. And that was news that really shocked the world, that surprised millions and millions of people. And quite simply because this was a man who we associated with happiness, with laughter, obviously with making other people smile and laugh. And this was a guy whose life and work brought so much joy to so many people. And so maybe like you, I was really surprised and really sad to hear this news. And I knew right away that I wanted to write something about it. And I didn't want to write about his life. I didn't know him. I never met him. I didn't want to speculate and write about his death. But I wanted to write something for other people who could relate. For other people who could relate to maybe getting to that place where they wondered if life was worth living, where they wondered if they could keep going. And so I'm going to leave you with this. It's called There Is Still Some Time. If you feel too much, there's still a place for you here. If you feel too much, don't go. If this world is too painful, stop and rest. It's okay to stop and rest. If you need a break, it's okay to say you need a break. This life, it's not a contest, not a race, not a performance, not a thing that you win. It's okay to slow down. You are here for more than grades, more than a job, more than a promotion, more than keeping up, more than getting by. This life is not about status or opinion or appearance. You don't have to fake it. You do not have to fake it. Other people feel this way too. If your heart is broken, it's okay to say your heart is broken. If you feel stuck, it's okay to say you feel stuck. If you can't let go, it's okay to say you can't let go. You are not alone in these places. Other people feel how you feel. You're more than just your pain, more than wounds, more than drugs, more than death and silence. And there is still some time to be surprised. There is still some time to ask for help. There is still some time to start again. And there is still some time for love to find you. It's not too late. You're not alone. It's okay. Whatever you need and however long it takes, it's okay. It's okay. If you feel too much, there's still a place for you here. If you feel too much, don't go. There is still some time. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, you're dismissed. Again, remember, there's merch in the lobby, and then tonight at 6 p.m. if you want to continue hearing from Jamie and the Ark. Have a great day.